What's up, folks? Welcome back to Tactical Tortoise. My name is Trevi, and I'm back with more coverage of the Tyranid spoilers for the upcoming Codex. We've gotten more information from Warhammer community, this time about the new kit, the Norn Emissary and Norn Assimilator models. These guys are the new big and pretty stompy monsters for the Tyranid faction. They have a wide variety of different capabilities, and we've got some good previews on what they're going to do on the tabletop, so let's dive right in. First of all, we have the top-line profile for both of these big Gribblies. While their profile is identical, we do have the Norn Emissary coming in with a little bit of additional defensive tech, a 4+ invulnerable save. Both of these models are move 10, toughness 11 with a 2+ base save, pretty good in 10th edition thanks to the easy access to cover, 16 wounds, a 7 leadership, which is mediocre, but should be easily passed given the fact that both of these models are confirmed to be synapse creatures and a pretty high OC value of 5. Now, the toughness 11 is a little bit lower than I'd like. T12 is really a cutoff point for heavy defensively oriented vehicles and monsters that really makes them difficult to chew through, even with dedicated anti-tank shooting. But a 2+ save and a potential 4+ invulnerable save on top of that does go a long way, especially since you're going to be able to stack that with other defensive effects, things like rapid regeneration for a 5+ feel no pain, and they also have some baked in ways to get feel no pains and other defensive benefits as well. Now, the Norn Emissary comes with its own special ranged attack. It does have psychic powers, which are what gives it its 4+ invulnerable save, and on top of that, it also has its psychic tendril, which is able to choose one of 3 attack profiles to shoot within the shooting phase. All of these have a 2+ ballistic skill. We actually have 2+ ballistic skill across the board for both the Emissary and the Assimilator, and I hope that that means that we'll also see 2+ weapon skill, because high reliability melee attacks are something that's hard to come by in Tyranids right now. The Neuroparasite is the first attack profile. It is a 2-shot, strength 8 AP2, D3 damage precision weapon. Kind of mediocre for precision, to be honest. D3 damage is fine, but you really need to be converting both of those shots and get pretty solid damage on them to actually kill a character, and precision already being a kind of mediocre benefit to have doesn't make this profile very exciting. I think most of the time we're going to be shooting the other available profiles. Neuroblast is one of those, a 2d6 blast weapon at strength 6 AP2 for 1 damage. Last but certainly not least, Neurolance is a 2-shot 12-inch range weapon with the Melta ability, so it has the potential to go to d6 plus 2 damage at 9 inches or less. These last two are pretty good profiles to have on top of what is probably ostensibly a melee monster, and especially given the fact that you're going to be able to stack it with other offensive effects, things like +1 to hit from playing it in Crusher Stampede if you're below your starting strength, or potentially getting the benefits of the Invasion Fleet to get lethal hits against vehicles or monsters and sustained hits against infantry. That is going to be able to benefit these pretty well. And there are some special rules on the Norns themselves to buff their attacks on top of that. Now, the Norn Assimilator has a much different ranged output. Instead, this thing uses Tox Injector harpoons, which, like I theorized in my video yesterday, actually do benefit their charge rolls when charging the target. Unfortunately, this ability only works on monsters or vehicles, so the Assimilator doesn't have a way to buff its threat range against smaller units, but that big stuff, which is probably going to be angled at destroying anyway, is going to be easier to charge. The weapons themselves are only 12-inch range, but come in at 2 shots at a 2+ ballistic skill, strength 12, AP3s for d6 plus 1 damage. A classic las cannon profile, which is nothing to shake a stick at. Now, the thing that I'm a little bit confused about on this profile is the fact that it is a singular Tox Injector harpoon that the profile represents. It's not a pair of them. So I'm wondering if it is actually going to have 2 of this weapon set. So it's going to have potentially 4 shots at this las cannon profile, which actually makes the Norn Assimilator a really dangerous combatant at that 12-inch range bracket. And you can even buff that with things like the Hive Tyrant to give it advance and shoot by giving it assault to allow it to move a pretty prodigious distance and dump all of these shots into something. Not confirmed that's how it works, but I do think it probably would have had a twin-linked ability, or it would be a combined Tox Injector harpoons or harpoon array weapon weapon profile rather than just being the profile for a single Tox Injector Harpoon. Now, I mentioned before that these guys have some additional abilities that will buff their damage output, and that is from their singular purpose ability. This is a really cool modal ability that triggers at the start of the first battle round, allowing you to select either to target an enemy unit or to target an objective marker. When you target an enemy unit, that individual model gets full hit and wound rerolls against that enemy unit for the entirety of the game. And this is selected per Assimilator or Emissary. Both of them have the same ability, and all of them are going to be able to use it separately. So you can potentially have Assimilators or Emissaries targeting a variety of different units to allow them all to influence different portions of the table. If you choose an objective marker instead, while in range of that objective marker, it gets a 5+ Feel No Pain and Objective Control 15. Real Vulcan Heston energy coming out of this one. This one does seem like the best because your opponent doesn't have the ability to just sort of refuse flank you or play that unit in a different way so that you don't necessarily get your rerolls against it, and it allows you to jam these huge hard-to-kill monsters directly up the middle of the table, give them huge amounts of objective control and staying power with that built-in Feel No Pain without having to use rapid regeneration or other defensive effects to keep them alive. A 16 wound model with a 2+ base save with a 5+ Feel No Pain is not easy to take down, and if anybody's played against Maliceptors in the current incarnation of Tyranids, this is basically just a superior profile to that. Now, beyond that, the only other confirmation of abilities that we have for these big Norn creatures are the fact that they are synapse creatures, which I mentioned at the beginning of the video. They are also not characters, so unfortunately for us, they don't have the ability to combine together with enhancements. They're basically just going to do what they say on the tin, plus maybe some additional interactions with other units or stratagems, but you're not going to be adding any abilities on top. To be fair, that also means they don't give up assassination, so your opponent doesn't have the opportunity to take assassination and bring it down if you are running a list that has several of these models in order to max both secondaries simultaneously. Now, the one downside I see for these big things is that they are relatively short-ranged, kind of melee-focused monsters at not a super long movement. Movement 10 is fine, but it doesn't look like they're going to have the ability to extend their threat range very much outside of the Tox Injector Harpoons on the Norn Assimilator. They're basically just going to be a 10-inch moving guy who has to get around terrain and somehow find their way into melee with the opponent's units. And while the ability to dominate center objectives by single-mindedly targeting an objective and making themselves more tanky on it is good, if these come out at a staggering points cost, that's probably not going to be that effective since you can find similar units elsewhere in the Tyranid Codex to do the same thing. That said, I'm hoping that we get some sort of mobility ability for these guys, maybe the ability to ignore vertical distance or scuttle over 4-inch walls like we've seen elsewhere in the game so far. That would make it much more easy for them to get around terrain and start out of line of sight from enemy big guns and then be able to jump in afterwards. If we also see some ways to get them the ability to advance and charge or other threat range increases elsewhere in the new detachments coming out, that's also going to be huge for these. A base 10-inch movement is good, but not the greatest thing in the world, but if you can buff it at all, it suddenly becomes extremely useful. So we'll just have to wait and see what else is on the datasheet for the Norn Emissary and Assimilator and what else comes in the new detachments. But that does mean there's a lot of exciting information to be coming out of this new Tyranid Codex once we get closer to release. So let me know down in the comment section what you think about these two, and if you think they're going to see play in Tyranid armies moving on into the 10th edition Tyranid Codex. Big thanks for watching all the way to the end of the video. Remember to keep it classy, folks, and have happy wargaming.